Good evening and welcome to the beginning of our Board of Ed meeting tonight. Donna, roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Here.
Mrs. Young, Mr. Chinchulli, Mr. DeQuila, Mrs. Penna,
Here.
Ms. Riley, Mrs. Kirsch,
Here.
Mr. Reinstein,
Here. On January 7th, this body by resolution adopted the schedule for this meeting. The time, date, and location of this meeting were accurately set forth therein. On January 8th, this notice was provided to all schools, all PTO presidents, to BHEA president, posted at the administration building. On the same date, a copy of that was emailed to the public library, tapped into Berkeley Heights, Courier News, and filed with the municipal clerk to file and post at Town Hall. This meeting will also be announced on the district sign at Columbia. Could I have a motion to move into exec session? Motion and a second. We are now in exec session and we will return for a public session at 7:30. We'll see you shortly. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first meeting of February. Could I have a motion to return to our public session? Motion a second. We are back in our public session. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. We have a couple of items on the agenda tonight under the Superintendent's Report. We will be having a discussion about diversity and our task force. We have a guest who's going to speak to us, which Melissa will talk about. We will share the results of our annual audit that our business administrator conducts with our external auditor each year. And then we will have a presentation regarding our remote learning, the remote survey that we did late last year about the experiences our students have with the remote learning, both the hybrid model and in person. Let me start out. We hope by now that many of you have had the opportunity to see the Today Show segment from this past weekend on teaching during a pandemic that highlighted three of our very own teachers: Kate Corcoran, fourth grade teacher at Hughes; Patricia Hetherington, Spanish teacher at Columbia; and Christine Talrico, an English teacher at GL. If you didn't know it prior to watching the video, you got to see what several of our incredible teachers are doing to educate our students under our hybrid model, and it is nothing short of exceptional. I saw a quote, I'll credit to Liz Kane, that teachers now play the role of actor, scriptwriter, camera person, sound technician, technical director, secretary of operations, advertising manager, and finally, wardrobe, props, catering, hair, and makeup. And although that list of roles clearly stretches a point to make a point, if you visit a classroom, you will see many of them on display. To that specific point, over the past 3 weeks, I've had the opportunity to visit all 6 of our schools and spend time in the classrooms with our students and staff. I'd like to share a few of my observations based on my visits because this is a case of seeing is believing. Our teachers and staff are truly doing a great job under very difficult circumstances. Between reorganizing the classroom to ensure the safest learning environment, teaching all day with a mask on, and explaining lessons to both in-person and remote students concurrently, there is no shortage of challenges that they have overcome. I observed an elementary school teacher literally kneeling down on the floor in front of their students' plexiglass barrier to explain a math problem to a young student. I saw several creative ways that teachers were engaging with their remote students, whether it was one-on-one, having them type comments or answers into the chat window, or assigning them to do a task on their own. I noticed many examples of our students using their Chromebooks and iPads to enhance their learning experience. And along the way, I learned more about Alexander Graham Bell as an inventor than I ever have before. I got a chance to see our guidance staff at both GL and Columbia interacting with students to develop their GL schedules for next year. And in what might have been the most creative lesson, I witnessed the students in Miss Richards' Macbeth class create their own amusement park based on their understanding of the Shakespeare story. Another highlight was my visit to Mr. Maresca's woodshop. He has reconfigured his woodshop, bought new software to interface with the 3D printers, and found a way for students to use technology to build projects remotely while they're at home using the 3D printers in his woodshop. It was truly amazing. In fact, I walked out with a gift, which I have right here, which is our brand, our Include, Inspire, and Empower brand, as a small gift for my visit. I was impressed that our students were focused on learning, even though they had to make adjustments as well to their education, wearing masks all morning, sitting behind plexiglass barriers, or walking down one-way hallways and staircases. In talking with our principals, I heard stories of how our teachers were taking professional development classes to overcome some of the technical challenges that they faced. I saw our partnership with the Ed Foundation on full display as teachers were using microphones and the amplification speakers that they purchased at the beginning of the year. I observed our district's entire learning environment adjust to something nobody could have ever conceived, yet we did so with maintaining our focus on safety and the best educational outcomes for our students. On behalf of the entire board, I offer a heartfelt thank you to our teachers and support staff who are persevering under very challenging circumstances and who have modified their craft to deliver the best educational experiences possible. We would also be remiss if we didn't take the opportunity to thank our parents, guardians, others who also work tirelessly to support our children and their education. Not only have the students shown up, which is more than half the battle, they've demonstrated how extraordinary they are when they work together as a community towards a common goal of top-notch education and learning. It's truly remarkable. Thank you, and let's keep moving forward. With that, could I have a recommendation for approval of our minutes from our January 7th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
And those minutes are now part of the record. Donna, correspondence. Donna, just closer to the microphone.
We received several email correspondence. One from Mr. Maselli regarding his comments from the last meeting. Mrs. Frangello sent a wonderful tribute about Mrs. Byram. There were 4 letters from teachers regarding COVID concerns. We also received 6 OPA requests since our last meeting. 3 have closed and 3 we are continuing to work on.
Thank you, Donna. I had an opportunity to exchange notes with Mrs. Frangillo, who wrote the letter about one of our teachers who passed away. And with her permission, I'm going to read that letter because I think it is a tribute to her and to our school district. And this is her letter. Our son Gianluca had the good fortune of being a student of Mrs. Byram from 2015 until she left the district in 2019. We're absolutely devastated to hear of her passing, and we feel compelled to share just how much Mrs. Byram meant to our family and what a champion she was for our son and all of our students in the entire Berkeley Heights School District. Mrs. Byram was a consummate, dedicated professional. She was always prepared, kind, and communicative. We will always remember her smiling face at our monthly parent meetings, carrying a binder almost as big as her to go over our son's progress. We knew Mrs. Byram is the self-contained classroom teacher at MKM. She was entrusted with the youngest students in the district with varying disabilities and taught with patience, perseverance, and loving care. Mrs. Byram worked after her cancer diagnosis, and she worked in the school in between treatments. She personified resilience and instilled that into her young students. She celebrated progress, both big and small, and in these youngest of students, sometimes the smallest achievements mean the most. And Mrs. Byram knew that. After we received the news of her passing, I went back to look at the tens, if not hundreds of emails that Mrs. Byram had sent about our son over the years. Her communication skills were fabulous, and it meant the world to us to know that our son was learning and doing every day. She sent us many pictures as well. The district speaks of inclusion as a goal, and Mrs. Byram was its biggest champion. She took the children on monthly field trips to the diner, a play at William Patterson, the zoo, and the fire station, just to name a few. She brought her students into their community with their learning objectives to experience the joy of being a kid. Her bulletin boards were amazing, and her classroom activities were so much fun. I'm including a photo of her and my son making brownies that she sent to me. Mrs. Byram did not work alone. The paraprofessionals at MKM and those whom are now at Mountain Park are phenomenal and were a wonderful support to Mrs. Byram and the children of the class before her diagnosis, during her treatment and absence, and beyond. Our heartfelt thanks to Mrs. Dasty, Mrs. Biscaderos, Mrs. Apollonia, Mrs. Lameda, and all of the other related service providers and other staff. Our sincere condolences for the loss to their tremendous friend and colleague. Our son is only in second grade. In years to come, he may not remember Mrs. Byram, but for us, she's someone we will never forget. Her impact on our family will be lifelong, and for that, we will forever be grateful. To that end, we'd implore the district to do something permanent and fitting to honor Mrs. Byram's memory and exemplary service as a beloved teacher and colleague. She was taken from us far too soon, but please do something to make her memory everlasting. Yours in good health, Richard and Maya Frangillo. So we thank them both for that letter, which was very touching. Our sympathies and condolence to Ms. Byram's family, friends, to those on our education staff that knew her. And Dr. Varley will be talking to Mrs. Corley Han when she gets back, and we'll figure out an appropriate way to acknowledge and remember Mrs. Byram. So again, thank you for writing that letter. With that, we're going to promote our two student representatives. And as soon as I see them come up, they All right, Thomas, I found you first, and then I'll just find Emily. Thomas, just wait 1 second. I want to grab Emily also. All right,
I'm here. I'm good.
Oh, Emily's there. Okay. Good evening, Thomas. Good evening, Emily. Emily, I'll start with you. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Okay. So for sports, for starting out the new year, sports are starting strong. Hockey already has a 4-0 record as well as a game tomorrow. Girls basketball has their first game upcoming this Monday. Boys basketball has a record of 1-1 and have their third game tomorrow. Unfortunately, there are still no fans allowed, but we are all excited to see what the teams can accomplish. As for school, we started the third market period in the hybrid schedule as we had in the fall. The cohorts have been back in school as of this week. There's also been a new installment of a gender-neutral bathroom that has been a great addition to the high school, both for inclusiveness and a way to make all feel comfortable. The student advisory had met to discuss the possible change of graduation gowns to make the colors not associated with any gender as well. GL is becoming the best place it can be, and there are many more positive changes to come soon. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Thomas, the
Hello.
floor is yours, Thomas.
Good to see you all in person. I'm hoping to join you in the future. So even though we are just 1 week into the month, one would not be able to tell from all the activities that students have participated in. Clubs such as Guitar Club, Coding Club, and Trend have all held their regular meetings. The Saga Club recently met with the Understanding Asian Cultures Club and BH and Filter to get feedback on the presentations they had made for the Support Zone program Lunch and Learns. The first Lunch and Learn was held today and helps teachers become better resources for their students, particularly their LGBTQ students. Additionally, in the Student Ambassadors' most recent meeting, they welcomed new members and discussed a potential program that would provide students a number of mediums where they could share their thoughts on a number of important issues. Today, 30 students took part in the prestigious American Mathematics competition. Based on students' score, they can advance to the next competition, the American Invitational Mathematics exam. Another prestigious exam that has been offered to students is the National Spanish exam. With over 20 students having signed up, the exam will give students the chance to be recognized on a national level for their Spanish. Tonight, members of the newspaper club are participating in an op-ed bootcamp led by veteran CNN and New York Times journalist Stephen A. Holmes. As a part of the program, students will be matched with a professional advisor to help them with their op-ed for Student Press Freedom Day. Lastly, the Diversity Committee is holding a literary circle on February 24th, where they will discuss comedian Trevor Noah's autobiography, Born a Crime. The autobiography sheds light into his experiences growing up as a Black child in South Africa.
Great, Thomas. Great, Thomas. Thanks very much. Questions from the board to either Thomas or Emily? Chris?
Now, Thomas, what is Student Press Freedom Day all about? Could you just expand on that a little bit?
I'm not entirely sure, but I know this is part of a workshop that they're attending today is to help them on this piece, and I think it's a part of them expressing their ability to express their voice freely without limitations. But I'm not entirely sure, but I can definitely get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions from that, Mike?
Yeah, quick question for maybe Emily or if maybe Mr. McKinney. Can we see the games yet on live stream? And if we can, is it easily findable, or how do we find them?
I'm not sure entirely. I know they had that plan, but they never sent anything out to the students about it as of that I know of. So I can look into that and talk to Ann Clifton about that as well, but I don't know as of now. I know it was said to be a plan, but I'm not sure what's happening with it.
Mike, are you talking about watching the GL winter events?
Yeah, any of the games on live stream or anything like that? Is that coming soon, or?
I can help you with that. So if you go to the Union County site that lists the the GL events, there's a little icon, a little camera icon that says live. And if you click on that, you'll go to the GL YouTube station that does that. So for example, if you go at 4 o'clock on Friday and there's a boys basketball game on that schedule, you click on the icon, it'll take you right in to watch the game. So they're right there on that. It's the Union County Conference website. It's available on the athletic website. If you go to the GL athletic website and click on the Union County Conference schedule, any game that is streamed will have that live icon and you can click on it.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions for our student reps? All right, Thomas, Emily, thank you very much. We'll now turn to the report of the superintendent. Dr. Varley?
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed the snow day and have dug yourself out from under all the snow. This will certainly be with us for a while, and it looks like there may be another storm on the way next week. A very sincere thank you to our maintenance crew for all their hard work clearing snow and getting our buildings ready for us to come back. In our investigation regarding the 12/21 board meeting, we have not had anyone come forward with any substantive information. We urge people to come forward if they have something they would like to share regarding the events that have made them feel uncomfortable. I will make sure that we post the email address for our attorney for former students. With all the snow, it does seem appropriate to take this moment to congratulate our Buildings and Grounds Director, Anthony Amiano. Anthony has been awarded the National Plant Manager of the Year award for the entire United States and Saudi Arabia. Congratulations on this well-deserved award, and I'm sure snow removal in Saudi Arabia is much easier than it is in New Jersey. I know that there may be some confusion as to the use of snow days versus remote days. As a rule of thumb, it is my intention to use snow days when it is not possible to get into the building, and remote days in place of a delayed opening or early dismissal day. However, I'm also trying to keep my eye on the bigger picture so that we don't have to pull days back from spring break. I know that we are all hopeful that we may be able to travel by then. I appreciate your support and flexibility as we try to minimize interruptions of the instructional calendar while trying to maintain the overall structure of breaks later in the school year. It has been a few weeks since I gave an update on the district Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative. In that time, I've been working with Mr. Hopkins to move these initiatives forward. During that period, we have identified and met with Mark Strachan. Mr. Strachan brings a wealth of professional experience and knowledge to the table, and we think that he can help guide our district diversity task force through the culture change that will make Berkeley Heights Public Schools inclusive of all races, sexual orientation, genders, religions, as well as mental and physical abilities. All students should feel welcome, safe, accepted, and included when they come to school. Mr. Strachan is here tonight to give a brief overview of his experience. After this meeting, we will be sending out invitations to form the BH Diversity Task Force. As a reminder, the task force will essentially be creating a strategic plan for the district equity, for the diversity, equity, and inclusion for the district, as well as metrics to measure our progress. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Mark Strachan. Mike, do you think you can promote him?
I just did.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm not sure if everybody can hear me.
We can hear you, we can't see you.
Okay. All right, let me see if I can do something on my end to do that. How's that? Is that a little better? Outstanding. Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your board meeting this evening. And I give my respects to the board members, teachers, administrative staff, any parents, students that are participating tonight. I know how long and how difficult these meetings can be. There's a lot of business to cover. And my section tonight is just one small part of an overall agenda that you have. To Dr. Varley's point, I am extremely excited about the challenges that I have an opportunity to help you face. I have spent the last 40 years, and I'll go back and say that, 40 years as an African-American man in the halls of corporate America on both the advertising agency side and the client management side at companies like Publicis, NWA, Leo Burnett, BBDO, Diageo, and most recently chairing the AdColor organization, which is the national, and that very proudly now international portal for diversity, equity, and I did say equity, not equality, equity and inclusion for advertising, media, marketing, tech, and now music. This opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, is about you. And I am here to bring my level of experience of engaging change in organizations as relates to culture, and culture that is about to drive overall opportunities for inclusion. And culture change is difficult. Culture change does not happen overnight. You all understand that just as much as I do. But the opportunity is there, and the reality is that it is time for America in general to start shifting and changing our cultures so that we can be more inclusive. I look at it as a bag, and it's wonderful. It was a great analogy, a bag of M&Ms. And you think about it, M&Ms, you know, it's just one great bag, and they're all there, they're all M&Ms. But inclusion is that opportunity for them all to mix together and truly be equitable as M&Ms. Not a green M&M, not a red M&M that kind of is over there, that's, you know, kind of shunned to the side. And this is where the dynamics of culture become so critically important, because these are issues that we didn't necessarily have to deal with 15, 20, sometimes even 5 years ago. Many of us that carry extended degrees, whether they be on the pedagogy side or in the corporate management side, didn't get this kind of training in our corporate America days or our MBA days or our PhD days. But this is the reality of today. And so I am really excited about the opportunity to help guide the strategic plan. That's an overarching strategic plan for all of your entire school buildings and the 2,500, 2,600 students, and also the parents, the community at large that is a part of that, and the intersectionality that they all bring to the party. The real dynamic here is that when we think about culture, and I'll use the word cultural empathy, it's really about the opportunity of recognizing that we all have differences of values, differences of economic background, et cetera. I am an African-American man by the United States of America's check in the census box. But in true reality, I am a man of Bahamian descent My family came from the Bahamas, born and raised in the Bahamas. I was born here, but I grew up in a Bahamian household that happened to be in America. And the wonderful examples and all of the cultural dynamics that came from that impacted my life. Secondarily, probably the next round of impact of my life was in school. And so today we have teachers continuing to be the influencers that drive influence, the influencers that teach and train the influencers. And some of the best influence on my life came from my teachers. As a matter of fact, if somebody asked me today, I could tell you, Sister Rosemarie Dugan was the most outstanding teacher in my life. Brother Anthony Francis, and I did go to Catholic grammar school and a Catholic high school. He was the most important influence in my life. Here I am, north of 50, and these individuals are still critically important to who I am today. So that intersectionality of teaching, but understanding cultural empathy, change, tradition, the actions, and bringing forth the principles of diversity, equity, and I put equality in parentheses because we could have equity, we could have equality. We had that before. We had separate but equal. Now we're talking about equity where everybody can have skin in the game. And in driving in a real culture of inclusivity is a mindset. It's a mindset that begins where your comfort zone ends, ladies and gentlemen. Think about that. It truly begins where your comfort zone ends. I know you've gone through bias training. When you get past the ability of your comfortability of your biases, that's where the real work of DE&I begins. And so I'm extremely excited about the opportunity to participate in that and help get you through the contemporary challenges that exist. Put some of the traditional baggage aside, not culture. I'm sorry, not saying traditional heritage, things that we do as a part of who we are as Berkeley, as a Berkeley public school district, as an individual school, our colors, our feel, and so on and so forth. But to put the baggage aside so that we can drive forward. And so that's really exciting for me. It's exciting for me to be a part of it. And let me end by saying this: plan beats no plan. We can move along and expect these things to happen and hope they happen and end up in some places that are not necessarily comfortable. I'm extremely pleased to hear a few things tonight: gender neutral bathrooms, Asian cultural sharing, diversity in a literary discussion about Trevor Noah's book, lunch and learns. These are wonderful tactics that I'm sure are permeating throughout, but how do we make that universal? And how do we develop a strategic plan that is sustainable, that helps drive change, and puts the pieces in place so long after everyone on this call is no longer in the building, the opportunity is still driving forward and maintaining the forward motion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm extremely excited, and I want to thank Superintendent Varley. I want to thank Mr. Hopkins, and I want to thank Ashley Janosko, people who really had the vision to kind of say, could you help us move this along? And with the approval of the board, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and help you get this done. This is what I do for a living. And if I can change it in corporate America, if I can change it in the music and the record industry, I think I got a shot to help you get downtown and put the pieces in place as you move forward in your world of education. I will be happy to take any questions.
Hey, Mark, thank you very much. We welcome you joining our team, and we look forward to your participation and your expertise. Are there any questions for board members for Mark while we have him for a little bit tonight? Chris.
Hi, Mark. Very nice to meet you, sir.
Same here. Good evening.
It's really more of a comment than a question, but I am aware that you are not new to Berkeley Heights. We have worked with you before. My understanding is you've done some anti-bias training for us. I think that was last spring or early fall. Just expand on that, because
in the fall.
So I think it's wonderful that you know us a little bit, and now you're going to help us with craft this strategic plan and sort of focus on some key initiatives that can get us where we want to be.
Thank you.
So you did training of,
Yes,
you could
I
just-
did a session for you in the fall, right as school was starting, on conscious and unconscious bias, and the pros and cons and the issues, and then the action steps relative to those particular areas. And it was called "Let's Get Conscious About Bias."
And how did you feel that went?
I think that from the standpoint of the feedback that I got, that it went very, very well, because what it did was it forces people to stop and think.
Mhm.
It forced people to kind of recognize some of the things that we don't recognize on a day-to-day basis as to what are our unconscious biases. And again, some of the things that we kind of bring along with us just naturally. I think it also pointed out that many of us understand the area of the conscious, and those are kind of didactic, and they're taught to us, and many of them have legal and other ramifications around us. But the unconscious ones are the ones that sometimes really kind of get in the way. And so we went through some wonderful discussion and training dynamics of how to recognize, how to stop, how to think. And I think, again, from the feedback, it was well received. But it was an opportunity to establish some benchmark. It was an opportunity to lay some groundwork, and to get people thinking and acting and understanding how to move forward. And it's both a combination of theory, which is all great, but you got to put practicality into the mix. And I think we did that, and I think people walked away very, very satisfied.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mark. Any other questions from board members?
I have a question, Doug.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, Mark, good evening. Thank you very much for doing this. Very exciting for what you're hearing. Can you give us a 50,000-foot level of kind of next steps? What are you going to see, kind of the different program you're going to roll out, just to understand everything? I know we still have to go through a lot of interviewing and working, but just kind of a high level of, kind of the next steps and what are we going to see?
I'd say the next steps are a combination of a couple of things, and you won't see anything roll out immediately. The real activity has to be, once the task force is established, is what do you already have and how is it working? So there are three things that I like to do, and I would be working with the task force and the administration to kind of pull this together. The first thing, and there are 3 A's. One is truly audit, and audit what you have, audit what we don't have, where the gaps are, how do you fill those gaps? What are the challenges within the environment and the culture, legally? And there's so many things, as you know, in the world of education, that you just cannot do as easily as I might be able to do in corporate America. All right, so it's a dramatically different understanding. And just as background, I'm the vice chairman of the board of Adelphi University, so I get that there are challenges in the world of education that are dramatically different. The next thing is to awaken, and in that awaken is, again, where are our gaps of training and understanding, and what do we need to pull together, again, internally, as well as amongst our external cohorts. And those are parents, those are the constituency outside of the school at large that impact the school, that has an impact on our children and our young people and their thinking and their focus, and our community at large. And then the last piece is the ACT. And the ACT is really, that's when you start to see the outgrowth and the outcome of that. The recommendation of plans, the recommendation of tactics, the recommendation of true rollout and next steps, and then ultimately trying to get the approval in the downtown of the metrics accordingly of how we're going to benchmark against those things. So that's kind of the thought process of how we would come at this. But the first thing is to really audit.
Thank you. Very informative. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions from board members? Mark, maybe I'll ask the last question. When you look at the work you're going to do, if a year from now, maybe 18 months from now, we as a school district were to be wildly successful in improving our diversity, what would that look like to you? Can you describe for the community what true success would look like a year, maybe 18 months from now, realizing what you said, that this is a journey, changing culture is long-term. But what would that look like to someone who is in our community, or maybe even someone who moved into our community? What would that look like after you work with us for, again, that 12 to 18-month window?
Great. True measure of success would be, and I think it's important for us to frame it in the scope of diversity, because too often diversity is plotted and anchored solely in race and ethnicity, and not in true diversity of thought, lifestyle, and attitude. But I think the true measure at that point would be that there has been unbelievable dialogue, acceptance, and a whole host of conversation around breaking down the silos that may or may not exist, some that we currently know that exist and others that we didn't even know existed. Attitudes and shift and change, and the ability to accept others just on the basis of who they are. There's an ability, there's a measurement of movement in acceptability, not just tolerance, but acceptability and respect. There's a whole boatload of discussions going on, and more importantly, they're all linked to a strategic framework of where we intend to go 5 years from now, where we intend to end up 5 years. So it's not just that we had some great discussions and we brought in some speakers and we did some nice things and it was all kumbaya and we walked away and said, boy, that was great. Now we can't, no. And more importantly, the work that we begin is becoming embedded in the culture of the organization. And the best form of that is that there will be more people espousing and be able to having the conversations and lead some of this. And you won't need necessarily to have a Mark Strachan in the room every day, all the time. That would be unbelievable. Those would be the fact that we start to see the advocacies and the people moving forward and the people really embracing it, and it starts to seed and embed in the culture.
Mark, thank you again. Thanks for joining us this evening. Again, we look forward to hearing from the task force and their updates.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your evening. Talk soon. Cheers.
Thank you. Melissa, back to the rest of your report.
So now I will turn it over to Ms. Felizzola so she can introduce the auditor for our audit presentation.
Mike, if you can promote Bill Swisher, our school district auditor. One of our state requirements is to have an annual fiscal audit. Bill and his team are in our schools during the summer conducting the audit. They look at our purchasing procedures, our accounting records. They look at everything that we do detailed, and they prepare an audit for us. They prepare audit statements and financial statements. Okay. Does not see Bill Swisher on our on the screen. Is there a CPA, Mike? Or
I don't see the name Bill Swisher or CPA anywhere on the list.
If you are our auditor, would you raise your hand so we can locate you?
I don't have a message from him.
Okay, why don't we'll come back to him. Why don't we move forward with the presentation part, and when Bill joins, we can reverse the order. So why don't we move to the remote survey presentation?
So we're going to move on to Mr. McKinney and Ms. Kopaz. They will be doing a presentation on our remote learning survey that we sent out in December. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Ms. Kopaz, would you start your video, please?
Good evening.
Mary Beth, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Scara, I need a little assistance on being able to, the settings to share my screen.
Okay, Mr. McKinney, you should be good now, sir.
And give it a shot. bear with me one second here. Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. Back in December, the district collected feedback from district parents about classroom instruction that took place in the hybrid model throughout the fall. 417 families representing 703 students participated in the survey and provided us with meaningful data that the district administrators were able to use to make informed decisions and improve instruction for our students. While we are sharing the results this evening, our team has continued their work to be flexible and responsive to the challenges presented by the ebb and flow of the pandemic. The column on the far left of this chart represents the district totals with each of the 6 building results listed to the right. The orange and the green represent people who indicated satisfaction, while the yellow and red represent dissatisfaction. The frustration with the duration of the pandemic and its impact on schools was evident in the survey results. However, a majority of respondents expressed satisfaction with the instruction provided throughout the fall. District-wide, only 14% of the responses indicated a level of dissatisfaction. You will notice a similar format on this slide. This slide includes a not applicable category for those people who did not attend the same district school last spring or were not in our school district. The same positive story holds true as people shared their perceptions compared to last spring. While we were thrust into fully remote setting without time to prepare and plan, our teachers did an outstanding job adapting and supporting our students through the end of the year. And although we all long for a return to the normal school setting, it is clear that most people agree that we learned and improved from last spring to make the best of a difficult situation. In fact, 68% of respondents district-wide indicated a level of improvement from the instruction provided last spring. This slide provides some additional context to the 2 subgroups of people who responded to the survey. 580 of the students represented in the data were part of the hybrid instruction, and 123 students were fully remote. As we break down the overall satisfaction in comparison to last spring, you will notice the results were relatively similar between the 2 groups. This slide reflects parent feedback on the challenges they faced with instruction during the pandemic. As is reflected in the chart, the 2 biggest challenges that the parents faced were the amount of support they needed to provide their children within the remote setting, as well as a concern about too much screen time for their students. These were the overwhelming results and consistent when you look at the results between the K-5 elementary level and the secondary level. The results remained consistent. We definitely understand the frustrations of parents who are working tirelessly with their children to support them with their work at home. It is important that teachers and parents keep the lines of communication open so that we work as partners to support our students when they are struggling with the material. As the year progresses, we continue to work to find the right balance between live or direct instruction and modeling by the teacher using Zoom with the work that can be done independently and without being in front of a camera and on the computer screen all day. As teachers and students become more and more familiar with the expectations and routines of our classrooms, it will be easier to provide time for more independent opportunities while still providing direct access to teachers for individualized and small group instruction. As we move forward, I will turn it over to Ms. Kopaz for the next few slides.
Good evening again, everyone. The first slide I'm going to present is on the question regarding students' mental health in this current learning environment. Parents reported that the pandemic and its impact on our schools has caused a strain on the mental health of some of our students. If you look at the bar graph, 92% of parents believe that their children are doing okay, that middle range from 4 to 7, or are feeling healthy. That's our green bar. 74% of parents believe their children's mental health was a 6 or higher on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 meaning extremely negative or concerning, and 10 meaning extremely positive and helpful. And of course, we have worked with the building principals and appropriate staff, including our school counselors, to provide support and services to students where mental health concerns were raised. On the next slide, you will see that parents have indicated that the mental health impact is being felt slightly more at the secondary level. In K-5, parents reported that about 45% of the children or their children are feeling okay or negative. And in grades 6 through 12, it's reported that 66% are feeling okay or negative. So again, those yellow or red sections of those bar graphs. On this next slide, we have some major takeaways from our open-ended responses on the surveys. On the left, you'll see the most frequent positive comments. Parents appreciate the efforts of the teachers under these challenging circumstances. There's a high level of communication from teachers and principals. And we're getting reports that parents feel there's improved schedule, structure, level of engagement, and instruction from the spring. And parents appreciate that we are continuing to work on these areas. On the right-hand side, you'll see the most frequent negative comments. Parents are concerned about that balance with screen time, direct instruction, and independent work. And again, screen time, the amount of screen time keeps being reiterated. We have remote learning. Parents feel that it does not always work for their children, whether it be organization, engagement, participation, or again, screen time. Inconsistency between teachers, classes, and that includes expectations, communication, workload, and homework. And we continue to work on this through articulation and grade level, faculty, department meetings, and through professional development. And we're continually trying to work towards consistency and common practices. On the next slide, we have our next steps and our district actions. We have ongoing professional development to support delivery of instruction in this hybrid environment. To date, we've had 222 staff members who have attended approximately 30 PD opportunities. Some of the areas have included Edpuzzle, Jamboard, Nearpod, ClassKick, all to support hybrid instruction. We have continued efforts to follow CDC and the Department of Health guidelines and protocols to safely move towards Plan A in all our buildings. And we certainly want more in-person instruction, but to do it in a safe manner. We have professional dialogue to work towards a better balance between direct instruction and independent student tasks that reduce student screen time while maintaining rigor. And we coordinate with building principals and appropriate staff to provide support, services, and resources for students who are struggling with their mental health. And as Mr. McKinney had mentioned, this does look different at various grade levels. So since we are hitting that halfway point in the school year, practices and protocols and procedures are in place, and students should be able to start to do more work independently so that we have a better balance and we can reduce screen time. So I want to thank you. I know Mr. McKinney also probably wants to thank you, and we're open for questions now.
Great. Questions from board members?
Just a quick question.
And looking at the overall satisfaction on the second slide, I guess, or the first slide of the presentation, noticing that in Mountain Park, there seems to be less satisfaction. Were there any particular instances? Hold on, my microphone went out. Were there any instances or things that may have happened at Mountain Park at the time of the survey, which would lead to a score such as that compared to other elementary schools?
There was nothing that really stood out, and I'm sure Mr. McKinney may want to add to this, but there was nothing that really stood out in the comments. Again, the overall comments we synthesized and put on the later slide, but we can't really pinpoint any specific areas specific to the school.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions from other board members?
Just along that same line, with the actually perfect slide you have up, you have it as percentages. By any chance, do we have a breakdown of the responses? You know, how many of the 703 responses, how many were high school, middle school, K through 5, just to have an idea of, is it more high school responded, more middle school, just to have the breakdown of the number?
Do you have that, Scott? I also have it.
Oh, yeah, I actually jotted it down. The 33% of the respondents were elementary school, 29% were middle school, and 23% of the respondents were high school. I don't have the counts, but that's the breakdown.
Roughly, you had a good sampling of all three cohorts.
Yes.
I have a question. Were there any surprises?
I would say not really. I mean, the survey results reflect the communication that we've done as an admin team and which principals have shared at all of our meetings. They were pretty consistent with what we were hearing. It was nice to hear some of the positive remarks. You know, the beginning of the year is full of so much troubleshooting and resolving issues and putting out fires. So it was good to hear some of the there were many positive comments about our staff and going above and beyond with communication with parents and working in that true partnership. So that was a pleasant part of this whole process.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Chris?
I have a question. For children who parents feel that remote learning is not working for their child because of their organizational skills or whatever, do we have the resources to put remediation plans in place to try to address some of these issues for these kids, for these specific kids that are really struggling with, you know, this form of learning? What are we doing for those kids?
There's a lot of tools, and we try to use the counselor and the different resources we have in each of the buildings, but we also try to maximize the afternoon sessions in a lot of those cases where we can get some more of that one-on-one or small group instruction to, you know, dive in a little deeper to identify the why behind the struggle, so that we can help that student. If it isn't organizational, do our assignments need to be broken into smaller pieces? Is it technology driven? You know, what is the why behind it? And the afternoon sessions give us those opportunities to meet with the students who are struggling and develop plans based upon what we learn from those discussions.
You know, and this was an observation that I shared with Doug when I first saw this presentation, which we got a couple of days ago. And Helen, it's an answer to your question, were there any surprises? The thing that surprised me that seemed kind of counterintuitive was that on that first slide, when you saw, you know, you see that the older grades, the older kids seem to be less satisfied than the parents of the younger children. And I actually thought it would be the opposite because, you know, younger kids need more supervision. And I thought, you know, we kind of heard it would be more difficult for them with remote learning. The older kids, you know, were more mature, had better developed organizational skills, but in terms of the satisfaction, it was just the opposite. So that was surprising to me.
I have a quick question. Can you hear me? One of the comments in the negative was that the inconsistency between teachers and classes. Can you just clarify again what you're doing just to make sure that you sort of bridge that gap?
Sure. The key component to that is to utilize our existing meetings and professional organizational structures to have those conversations about expectations, routines, and to collaborate. So at the high school, that's faculty meetings, department articulation meetings, and those settings. At the middle school, as we all know, we have our teams, and they have team planning time where they can work on that consistent delivery, within a team and also across teams within the same grade level. And finally, at the elementary, we have ongoing grade level meetings that, are focused on the, curriculum and instruction and making sure we're doing that. I will say that consistency is one of those things, and you've been on PTO curriculum liaison, and it's something we talked about before COVID and pandemic, and it's something we always strive for, but finding that balance between having lockstep classrooms and having the art of teaching take place is something that we always and will continue to work on moving forward.
Scott, is this a one-off survey, or will we do this sort of at the end of the year for benchmarking?
I would imagine that we'll reflect on some of these questions, and as our circumstances change and our environments change, we may collect some additional information, and some of it may fall off the survey. But we definitely want to keep measuring, how we're doing and what we can do better. And this was great information for us as an administrative team to look and dive into both, the individual buildings, but the overall big picture as well.
Bill, kind of on his question, are you planning on maybe doing it again in March, just to see if between now and March, and then that way if we have to recalibrate from March to June, any thoughts on that?
That's probably, it's probably about the right time period, maybe right before we head off to spring break, so that we have kind of similar, right? We did it before December, so we had some time to digest and process the information that we collect.
Agreed. All right, thank you.
Any other final questions from board members? Okay, Mary Beth, Scott, thank you very much. We're going to go backwards now. And I see Bill is here, and we promoted him. Bill, good evening, welcome.
Welcome. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
No worries.
Okay, so tonight I'm here to present the fiscal year 2020 comprehensive annual financial report, and also the auditor's management report. Once again, you're delayed in receiving these reports for the third year in a row. The state of New Jersey was late in getting out the pension numbers that we need to complete our audit. So like I said, we usually do this meeting in November, but they were late once again. So that's why we're late in February again, although you are on time because they extend the deadline until February 5th. So we're okay on that front. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Varley and Donna and everybody in the business office. It was not easy doing an audit during the pandemic, and I'd like to say that Berkeley Heights was probably one of our most accommodating districts. When we needed documents, they were emailed to us. When we needed to come in and pick things up, it was very easy for us. So they really went above and beyond. I just want to thank them for that. There's good news all around once again tonight. In the comprehensive annual financial report, that's where we have our opinion on your financial statements. Donna gives us the financial statements, and we do our audit procedures, and then we render an opinion on it. The district has once again received an unmodified opinion. So that's credit to Donna and the staff in the business office. That's the best opinion you can get. And then also in the comprehensive annual financial report is your financials, and the district once again is on solid financial footing. The district started the year with a surplus of $5,801,000 and ended the year with a surplus of $6,930,000. So financially, the district is in good shape. And the smaller report, the AMR report, that's a report the state of New Jersey requires us to issue They give us 9 specific areas to look at for the audit. If we have any findings or recommendations, they'd be listed down in there. And I think for probably the 3rd or 4th year in a row, there are 0 findings and 0 recommendations. So once again, a credit to Donna and the business office. So it was a clean audit. It wasn't easy, but the district was very helpful. And all in all, I think it's a good report. And if anybody's had any specific questions on it, I'll answer them right now.
Great, Bill, thank you very much. Thank you to you. I know challenging times for you to do an audit remotely, so thank you for doing it. Any questions on the board for Bill regarding the audit? Okay, Bill, thank you very much. We look forward to continue working with you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good night.
Dr. Roy, does that conclude your superintendent's report? Great, thank you. We'll move to liaison reports. Does anybody have any liaison reports this evening?
Yes, I do.
Chris?
Can I go? On January 14th, we held a meeting of the newly combined Finance and Facilities Committee. The purpose of the meeting was to have a high-level preliminary discussion about our key budget initiatives for the 21-22 school year and related strategies for accomplishing those initiatives. We're going to meet again next week as a team to do a first pass on the preliminary numbers based on the guidance that was given. And just as a reminder, from a scheduling perspective, adoption of our preliminary budget for 21-22 school year, that will be presented at the March 18th Board of Ed meeting with our final adoption on April 29th. So as far as the process goes, we're in very good shape. That's all.
Great, thank you, Chris. Other liaison reports?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Helen and I, Mrs. Kirsch and I, have been attending the Environmental Commission meetings in town. The part that perhaps involves the school district is there's going to be an LED light bulbs available as a giveaway as part of New Jersey's Clean Energy Initiative. And we're going to be involved as much as they need our help. So far, it looks like storage of possible bulbs, as well as any information we can give them that might aid them in distribution. Helen, Mrs. Kirsch, do you have anything to add?
Well, yes, we were involved with the sapling distribution last year for Arbor Day, and they do want to initiate that program again, and we'll be reaching out to the school. It just was a very successful program, and distribution went very smoothly. So they would like to use the Columbia Middle School again. And I just saw before the meeting that, we've been talking about the Sustainable New Jersey certification, and Berkeley Heights was just awarded silver certification for, I guess this is our 3rd or 4th year. And it just shows the dedication of the community to environmental issues. And that committee worked very hard to dot all their I's and cross all their T's. So big congratulations to them. Union New Jersey School Boards continues to offer pods and information to districts if they need it, and the workshops from the convention are available, and there are some that may be of interest or help, with some of the things that each of the school districts are struggling. So if you want to take a look at them and, join in those, it's a great opportunity to jump on all at once. The ed services, they're still working hybrid, and of course took snow days like we all did. And they met together with several of the other environmental commissions throughout the state. And there's a general feeling that the educational community at large really doesn't understand the function of the Educational Services Commission. So they are going to be working together, and Mike and Eric from Union County are going to try to take the lead and work with the Department of Education to see if they can, show the services that we do provide to the other districts. I mean, they handed out the masks. They've done a lot of individual things that, just being the kind of district that they are. And Union County School Boards, I know Joy attended the meeting, and it was just kind of an introduction for new and a reminder for us more seasoned board members of what our responsibilities are. And it was a pretty good program. And I believe there's one coming up this month. I'm not quite sure when. Do you have it, Joy, or?
I don't have it right offhand now.
Okay. But, we all get notified, and it's much easier to attend a Zoom meeting than it is to get out and, get down to Westfield or wherever they do have the meeting. So
Yeah, there was some really good general discussion among the different districts about going back to, what's going to happen next year, what's the planning looking like for next year, and what are districts thinking about as they move forward. So that was just an interesting sort of brainstorming session that they went through.
So, and I just want to thank Joy and Robert for stepping up on these two committees and giving a helping hand.
No problem, Helen.
Thank you for allowing us.
Are there any other liaison reports?
I attended on the 25th, the Truth and Racial Healing and Transformation Committee for the township. And one thing that came out of it was the youth group interested in starting a mentoring program at the high school. So Mr. Hopkins and I connected the student to Dr. Barley. So they're going to be working on that, but it was really exciting to see how the students wanted to get involved and create a mentoring program.
Great, thanks, Joy. And I would just share one that Dr. Varley and I attended the PTO area council meeting this past week. And this is the one where all the principals attend. So they talked about a number of the creative gifts that were given, the transitions to the different schools, some of the kindness projects that were going on, some of the community outreach that's happened at the schools, a lot of work on inclusiveness, some of the outside speakers that the PTO has sponsored, and some of the Teachers College professional development work as well. Okay, Donna, facilities report.
I wanted to give an update on our building filtration systems and to report that we are in compliance with all of the requirements of the DOE. All school buildings are required to satisfy the POSHA indoor air quality guidelines, and no additional ventilation or air quality requirements have been imposed on school buildings as a result of COVID-19. The current New Jersey Mechanical Code requires that each space within our buildings have a certain amount of outside ventilation air in order to maintain proper indoor air quality. The district is meeting the state guidelines regarding air quality in schools and have taken several steps to increase air circulation within the buildings and classrooms. The classroom univents bring outside air into the classrooms. The guidelines necessitate that the district's HVAC systems are operational. In Berkeley Heights, there are mechanical ventilation units in all classrooms. All units have been evaluated and are functioning properly. The units are regularly maintained and serviced. The district has taken additional steps and is providing a flush out of the occupied spaces. The operation of the HVAC units has been modified to provide 2 hours of occupied operation before and after being occupied. This additional operation will provide more dilution of any possible contaminants. There has been a lot of discussion regarding MERV 13 filters. Our current univents are older and cannot accommodate MERV 13 filters. Installing these filters would cause the fan motors to overload the recommended amp draw and would actually reduce the airflow substantially. For rooms without mechanical means to bring in outside air, the code allows for windows that open to provide fresh air to meet the needed outside air component. Opening windows will provide additional ventilation as needed. All classrooms within the district have windows which can be opened. In addition to these measures, the rooftop exhaust fans, which are also part of existing mechanical systems, have been evaluated for proper operation. Fans which were not working properly were repaired or replaced for the opening of school in September. Additional rooftop fans were added to large group areas, gyms, and multi-purpose rooms, increasing air exchanges throughout the building. Another step we have taken is allowing teachers to leave the classroom doors open. This also increases the air circulation within the classroom. I also wanted to thank the custodians and maintenance staff for all the work they did in getting our schools ready and dealing with the storm. They spend hours here. They plow all of the parking lots, clear all the walkways. So they really did a great job. We had so much snow and we were able to open schools without any issues. So I appreciate what they do for us.
Great, thanks, Donna. Any questions for Donna on the facilities report?
No questions, but just want to echo the thanks to the team for the snow removal, and also again to congratulate Anthony on his very well-deserved recognition.
Great, thanks, Mike. Okay, we are going to move to the citizens hearing portion of our meeting. As a reminder, to be recognized, please ensure that your first and last name is listed on your device. You can use your raise your hand functionality within Zoom. I will unmute you, allow you to come off of mute and address the board. Although not required, we certainly would prefer that your camera be turned on so we can see you as well. If you have more than one question, please ask them all at the beginning. The board recognizes students and staff members' right of privacy and therefore encourages all members of the public to address their concerns regarding individual students and staff members by meeting privately with the appropriate administrative staff. When addressing the board in a public forum, members of the public should refrain from identifying any student or staff member by name and are solely responsible for their comments, which could be considered defamatory or slanderous according to the laws of the state of New Jersey. Each resident will have 3 minutes to speak. And with that, I see the first person who raised a hand is Stacy Toporek.
Hi, how are you?
Stacy, good evening. How are you tonight?
I'm doing okay. I just had a quick comment. Chris Riley had asked what the Student Press Freedom Day is. So as the newspaper and yearbook advisor at Governor Livingston, I just wanted to let you know. So the Student Press Freedom Day is a national day sponsored by the Student Press Law Center that celebrates the contribution of student journalists and highlights the need for student journalists to be able to report in their school publications free of censorship or threat to their advisors. In addition, we have quite a few students who have taken workshops with the Student Press Law Center and are trying to lobby to get a law in a bill passed called New Voices in New Jersey that would give student journalists the ability to not have to go through admin review or fear of being censored by administrators. Not that we've had a problem in recent times since I've been the advisor, but it's just that students are becoming more knowledgeable about their First Amendment rights, and as they apply to student journalists. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Great, Stacy. Thank you very much for joining and sharing that. Much appreciated. The next person is Kelly Maury. Kelly, good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Welcome.
Excellent. I am not able to turn my camera on. It says that you guys are not allowing that function, just so you know. Otherwise, I would be there.
Okay.
My question for you guys is, are we working on a spring musical for the Governor Livingston High School students?
Dr. Barley?
Yes, we received an email. I don't know if I can't remember if it was last week that they are starting the process to work on this musical. It will most likely be virtual.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Kelly. The next person is Yelena.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. My daughter's in Mountain Park. I heard that there's a surplus of about $1 million from last year. I was wondering what percentage of that came from CARES, or if we're anticipating any additional funding from CARES for the rest of this school year. And since there is a surplus, in the second part of the question, will any of that funding be used to supplement the teachers' aides in the classroom? Because I know I've asked for teachers' aides, and budgeting was one of the reasons that it couldn't happen. So is that something that we can consider, or is that something that can happen possibly?
Donna, do you want to talk about where we stand with the CARES aid, and then what we're doing with some of our funding for this year?
Yes. So we were fortunate that we have this surplus this year. It's budget management. It's a series of things that have resulted in this surplus. And the surplus, there are restrictions on when we can use it and how we can use it. So the surplus that we generated from last year will be used in next year's budget. And we, as Mrs. Riley stated, we are working on next year's budget, putting information together. We get requests from the schools based on their analysis of their needs, and we put this together, see what our revenues are, and revenues include surplus, tax levy, tuition income, and we use that to develop the budget. So right now we're looking at it globally, and we're coming down to those more specific requests regarding personnel and things that teachers need in the classroom. So we are reviewing all of this closely.
Great, thank you, Donna. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board? I do not see right now any other hands raised. I hear one more coming in. Michael LeBon. Michael, good evening. How are you tonight?
Good evening. I'm not able to turn my camera on, but first I'd like to thank the district for pushing forward with Plan A and the success that I've seen so far with it. I'd like to thank both the admins and the teachers around the district who have had a very successful start with it so far. I'm seeing much improved both academics and responses from my children who are attending their schools now 5 days a week, every week. And it's a definite improvement in their instruction. Reviewing the survey, 3/4 of the students in the district, the families, didn't respond according to your own data. So I'm just concerned about the validity of that survey when 3/4 of the parents didn't bother to engage at all. I know I responded to both surveys of both of my children, and I'm wondering why 3/4 of the parents in the district didn't bother to engage. And I'm just concerned that if the data isn't complete there, that you might not be getting the full picture. And I would encourage the district to do more extensive outreach from the follow-up survey to get more parental involvement, because less than 1/4 of the parents responding doesn't really give you a full picture to what's going on in the district.
Great, thanks, Michael. You know, we do send out the survey. We did send out a follow-up note Obviously, we got what we got back. We will continue to reach out with under other vehicles to see if we can get increased participation, which we certainly would welcome. So share your concern about having 700 plus. At least we got 700, so we do have some data, but obviously the more the better. Are there other members of the public? One more. Tina, good evening. How are you tonight?
I'm well, Mr. Reinstein. How are you?
I am outstanding. Welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you. I just want to recognize the phenomenal job that our teachers, administrators, and staff are doing. I know it's not easy, most certainly during this hybrid and remote model. When looking at your overall satisfaction, I do agree with Mr. LeBlanc and echo that same sentiment. I think that you definitely need to take a look at this again in the spring to see the trends and how you can best prepare for the following year. So I look forward to answering another survey. But I want to also commend the Hughes School, because I know that Ms. Snarty does a tremendous job at her school, not to say that the other principals do not, but in the data, it shows that she has the least amount of dissatisfied or not, whatever the red was, sorry. And so I just want to commend her, and I want to actually think around how we can infuse the same kind of joy and engagement that Mrs. Nardi and her team at Hughes get from students while they're on campus. And perhaps also maybe alleviating some of those social emotional components that our students seem to be facing across the board. Knowingly, yes, a little bit more so in the upper grade levels. And I wanted to see if the board could do just a little bit more thinking around that with the individual principals and maybe tapping into whatever the Hughes team is doing to get those scores. My other, and this is just a question, for the curriculum, I'm thrilled that you are working with Mr. Strachan. Actually, I have a lot of experience knowing the work that he's done in equity has been phenomenal. I do know that this is a different push for him given the educational climate. And I wanted to see if our school districts will be working with other school districts to figure out how to shape and form this diversity curriculum and what that might look like to maybe partner together as we all tackle this.
So I can answer that question. Today, I met with the superintendents of Union County, and the Department of Education is coming up with a culturally responsive metric that Mr. McKinney and Ms. Kopaz will be using to go through our curriculum to make sure that it is culturally responsive. We also did a survey, K-5, and Ms. Kopaz did mention this at the PTO meeting. Well, it wasn't the PTO. At one of the meetings we had, that one thing that came out was that our school classroom libraries, a lot of the books don't represent the students that are in the classroom. So that is something we are putting into our budget for next year to make sure that we get books that represent our students. But we will be looking into our curriculum to make sure it is equitable for all of our students.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Wally. Thank you, Tina. Is there anybody else wishing to address the board this evening? I will pause for a minute. I don't see any other raised hands, but I will pause for one more minute to make sure that, oh, I now see another one. Gail Bradford. Gail, good evening. Gail, you can unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Doug? Sorry.
I can. Gail, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to see the Berkeley Heights Board of Ed meeting in person, reflecting the in-person instruction at the elementary schools. I also encourage the Board of Ed to continue to move from an all-remote meeting to a hybrid model, which includes a portion of the public. And concerning, I also see Board of Ed members at the in-person meeting taking off their masks to speak. And again, I don't know the distances there, but masks are an integral part of our safety protocols in our schools. And I would expect the Board of Ed members to set a better example to the community and to our students at our meetings.
Great, thank you for your comment. I can assure you that those who are speaking without masks are socially distant and more than 6 feet apart. Is there anybody else that wants to address the board this evening? Seeing nobody, I will close the citizens hearing portion of our meeting, and we will move on to the rest of our agenda. Can I get a motion on administration items?
Yes, I will move item 14A through D.
Motion a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Young, Mr. Chuli, Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Riley,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Moving forward, item 15, personnel.
Yes, I move personnel items A through H.
Second.
Motion a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Young, Mr. Chuli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Riley, yes, Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Business item 16.
I'll make a motion to approve business items A through H. I guess we want to do it A through I, and Berkeley Heights only for item I. So A through I, I'll
you
make a
can
motion.
still move it, yes.
Yep. So motion for A through I.
Is a motion and a second. Any discussion? I am going to suggest that we remove item D from the agenda this evening. That item needs a little bit more investigation before we vote on that. So I recommend that we vote on A through I, but removing item D.
I'm going to make that motion again.
So the motion will be for A through I, with the exception of D, and it's a motion a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes on A through H.
Mrs. Young, Mr. Chuli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Riley, yes, Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Item 17, finance.
Yes, I move finance items A through D as I reviewed the bills this month. And once again, no issues. Thank you very much, Donna, for all the answers to the questions.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes on item A.
Mrs. Young, Mr. Chuli,
Yes.
Mr. D'Aquila,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Mrs. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reinstein,
Yes. Other business to come before the board?
I have just two quick things.
Robert?
Thank you. The first would be, I didn't notice Teacher of the Year liaison among the committee appointments and liaison appointments. So I'm wondering if that is not taken, I'd be interested in it. Dr. Crisanino had done it for years, and I have actually assisted him as well in past years. So does anyone have an issue with that?
He wants to take Dr. Crisanino's position on that Teacher of the Year committee.
Did the teachers, I know Jerry's
It's a
done.
process right now, the people nominating, but we're not there yet.
Okay. All right, so Robert's voiced an interest in that. Hey, everybody else okay with that? Good. All right, Robert, it's yours.
Thank you. The second thing is when I was last here at the table in 2019, we were discussing school buses, transportation issues, particularly ways that we could improve some traffic issues and things like that that may affect our buses. So where I left off was I think Donna was going to perhaps get together with Mrs. Kirsch and talk about some possibilities that Mrs. Kirsch may be aware of, given her background, with respect to things we could do. I know we're speaking to the police very often, and it's great we have such a relationship with them, but they can't be everywhere all the time. So I do know you followed up, but can you give us some details on the follow-up?
Okay. Just to give you some background information, for our home to school transportation, we use a combination of district drivers and contracted vendors. Approximately 70% of our students are transported by our contract vendors. Our district drivers transport the remaining 30% of the students. We recently surveyed both the district drivers and the contracted drivers about their concerns regarding cars passing them when they have their lights flashing. Neither group reported that the cars not stopping when their red lights are on is a problem. There was a brief period of time several years ago when this was a concern. Over the past 2 years, this has not been a concern, and I do realize that traffic is down because of COVID, but they didn't feel that this was a concern at this time. We also reached out to the contracted vendors that we use, and we wanted to get information about cameras from them. None of the contracted vendors is planning to add cameras to their fleet. They have looked into it, and they do not feel that installing cameras would help with any traffic issues that they come across. The one thing they suggested, which they all have, is GPS on their buses, and we, based on their recommendation, we have GPSs on our buses. It helps us to monitor where the buses are and when they get there. We looked into it further to get more information, and the picture that a camera on a bus takes isn't sufficient evidence for the police to issue a ticket. The bus drivers would have to make a report to the police, make a formal complaint against the driver. The bus driver would then have to go to traffic court to testify and follow up. So the evidence that they give to the police would not result in a violation against a driver. What everybody recommends and what we really follow is that when we have concerns about an area or a street where people might be passing the bus, we do reach out to the police, and the Berkeley Heights police are always very cooperative with us. They take this as seriously as we do. They send a vehicle out, the vehicle surveys the area. Sometimes just having a police car in the area will stop someone or make them think about what they're doing. They have in instances pulled people over and given them tickets. And this has resolved any concerns that our bus drivers or the contracted bus drivers have. Something we do a lot is see what neighboring districts do. Most of the neighboring districts also use vendors, the same vendors that we are using. So they are not installing cameras on their buses. Kelly is part of a transportation group, and she reached out to other transportation coordinators, and the response that she got was basically no one has the cameras on their buses. Again, they're not finding it an effective way of dealing with any traffic issues. A safety measure that we use when designing our routes is that we don't have students cross major roads. The route is designed so that bus stops on the side of the road where the students live. So the students shouldn't be crossing any major roads. The bus drivers are very vigilant. They are always looking at the area. surveying it, making sure that isn't oncoming traffic. So based on this, I wouldn't recommend, or I don't feel it's necessary to add cameras to the buses.
Thank you. I appreciate all that hard work. I guess I have just a couple of points. My daughter, I won't let her take the bus because her stop is on Emerson, and she does actually have to cross Emerson to get on the bus and off the bus, presumably. So that's just not an option for us, in my opinion. The other thing was in terms of not seeing or hearing reports of lately of cars passing school buses with their lights on, their stoplights on. I understand, of course, in 2020, you mentioned during COVID, fewer people are driving, fewer kids are going to the school building, etc. But I do remember in 2019, again on Emerson, I've seen a car pass right in front of a stop sign from the bus itself with red lights flashing, and the sign was fully extended. And so I don't know, from living here, I can tell you I see a need. I appreciate your polling, everyone. One thing I genuinely don't understand, why would it not help with traffic issues or going after the people who do pass those signs if you have cameras? You seem to indicate that. Maybe I misunderstood. Why wouldn't that be helpful with traffic issues, particularly passing school buses that are stopped?
Can I jump in a little bit?
Sure.
Robert did indicate that I do have cameras on my buses, but they run, but they don't trigger. You have to have an impact in order to trigger the camera, or the driver has to manually trigger it. So they're not capturing a whole lot of things, because by the time that car speeds past, the driver, just can't trigger the camera. And if there's no impact, it's not getting triggered. It's also very expensive. The equipment is expensive, the licensing is expensive, and it has to be reviewed. So, I think working with the police department, adjusting routes and, moving bus stops so kids don't have to cross the street might be a good way to go. If it was a serious problem, maybe a second look, but I fully support Donna's recommendation not to move forward with the cameras at this time.
Okay, Robert, thank you for bringing that up. Donna, thank you for, I know you spent some time investigating that and looking into that on our district's behalf, so thank you very much.
Can I ask one other quick unrelated question?
Sure.
I know in January we had approved 2 new courses for next year at GL. I know courses opened up for registration for next year. Do we have any sense yet as to the interest in those 2 classes? It might be too early, but just curious. One was the Roots and Rhythm course, and then Race in America in the 21st Century. If it's too early, no worries.
It's too early. We should have, probably by the end of the month, we'll have information for all of our courses.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. There's one other item of new business to share, and it's regarding full-day kindergarten. Our original plan, as I think most people know, was to pilot a full-day kindergarten in September of 2020 and a rollout of universal full-day kindergarten in September of 2021. Last year, during the pandemic, the board decided to postpone the referendum and therefore delay the implementation of universal full-day kindergarten until September of 2022. Tonight, we're announcing that universal full-day kindergarten will be available to all township residents in September of 2021, which is our original plan. Our Finance and Facilities Committees met, as did our administrative leadership team, and feel we can begin the universal full-day kindergarten in September of this year, which is a change to what we said in the past. We do know that it is something that many of our residents desire. In fact, we had an oversubscription for the pilot for this year. So we're excited to announce that we can bring it back to September of 2021. We will have more information forthcoming at future board meetings, but we did feel it was important to share this update in February so parents who might have been waitlisted for the September full-day kindergarten pilot and might have been investigating external options are now aware that will be offered in the district. And again, more information to be shared at future meetings. Is there any other new business to come before the board this evening? Not seeing anything, we'll move on. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned and we are back here for our next meeting on on February 25th. Thanks and have a good rest of the night. Good night.